Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We're privileged today to be joined by our students, academics, professionals, and our supporters from around the world. So thank you for coming to celebrate this, whether you're in the UK, Ireland, the USA, South Africa, United Arab Emirates. We're very welcome to have you here today. And please feel free to use the chat feature. There'll be a toolbar at the bottom to type in, say hello, and let us know where you're joining from as well. My name is Luke Smith. I'm the program manager here at Engineers Without Borders UK, and I've had the pleasure of meeting many of you here before at launch lectures across the UK and Ireland and in pitching sessions. So it's great to see so many familiar names popping up in our participants list today. So thank you all for joining. I'd also like to extend a welcome to our students joining us early this morning from the United States as well. Thank you for joining us. And it's particularly, I guess, surreal to be in this role today, as in 2013, I actually participated in the Engineering People Design Challenge. So it's wonderful to see how much this design challenge has progressed, as well as the standard of reports as well. And just to inform everyone on the call today, we will be recording this session and we'll use the video publicly, for example, on our Engineers Without Borders UK website. And this recording will also be made available in the near future for all attendees. Now, I would like to introduce our Chair of Engineers Without Borders UK, John Pritchard, who will share a few words with you on the Design Challenge. Good afternoon, John. Thank you for joining us.
Luke, thank you very much, and welcome to one and all. And I've just seen in the chat box there quite a wide geography of participants in this particular program today. So wherever you go, whether it's very early in the morning, as it may be in Canada, or whether it's later in the day from further afield, this is a real opportunity for us to celebrate the contribution that engineers can make to society. And so from my perspective, it's a real privilege to be working on behalf of Engineers Without Borders UK and our partners to deliver this particular program of work. And I think that when you look at how this program has evolved over the last few years, it really is now what I consider to be, and that's my view as both having been an employer in the engineering sphere and now working in the world of professional engineering institutions, a really sort of useful program that helps students to develop some of their skills that other programs in universities probably can't do in quite the same way. And by that I mean, at university, you're faced with a wealth of different programs that make up, or parts of your program that contribute to your broad education in engineering. Whichever discipline that happens to be, you all tend to pick up, whether it's sort of numeracy, the engineering maths, or whether it's indeed modules on sustainability, or indeed embedded process safety or safety through the program. So pulling that all together is often quite difficult, and you can do it through a variety of options. But I believe that this particular program is a really good way to allow you to look at a problem. And in this case, we've looked at the Makers Valley in Johannesburg and looked at sort of quite a broad spectrum, from the built environment to digital, and how you can identify problems that you can solve. So you take all those inputs from your course, and every engineer has to synthesize a number of feeds to get to an output, and actually what we're looking for is an outcome. And so this competition really does sort of test you, the student, in working with others, maybe from your discipline, maybe from other disciplines, to produce a successful outcome. And so I think that if you've taken part in this program, you should A, have had fun and enjoyed it, B, learn to work with others, and C, seen the world through a slightly different lens. So on the back of that, I commend this program to all the academics that are also signed in today. Please do continue your support for this program, because as an employer in the past, I think it's an incredibly valuable tool for helping sort of today's graduates look at the world and start to tackle the problems that we all face. So without more ado, Luke, I'll hand back to you. And I think that's probably enough from me. But thank you all very much for joining us, and have a good afternoon or evening or morning.
Thank you very much for those kind words, John. It's always great to start off with such enthusiasm from your perspective as well. I'd like to start today just by giving a quick reminder of how we got to this grand finals. So starting in September, we had 1,025 teams participate. And after an initial assessment by academics, 87 teams submitted reports to us in April, which were then reviewed in May by our 250 reviewers from 33 countries, who helped whittle it down to our 37 finalist teams, who then pitched to our expert judges in June, and who then nominated 6 teams for the final round. And all are competing for 3 coveted prizes today. So what's happening today? Well, we'll be celebrating all that's happened in this year's Design Challenge, recognizing and thanking all those involved in making the Engineering for People Design Challenge possible. We'll then hear from Makers Valley with an update video on what's been going on, and then have the opportunity to ask questions to Chris and Simon, who will be joining us today from Makers Valley. After that, we'll be announcing the 6 teams that progressed through the pitching stage and been nominated by our pitching judges to the next stage. Following that, we'll have a 10-minute break at approximately 4 o'clock UK time. And when we return, our Chief Executive at Engineers Without Borders UK, Katie Cresswell-Maynard, will be presenting our keynote speech on globally responsible engineering. After that, we'll be joined by representatives from those 6 final teams for a quick Q&A on their experiences in the Design Challenge. Following this, we'll have the announcement of the winners of the Engineering People Design Challenge 2020. So firstly, I'd quickly like to thank all of you who joined us on Wednesday for our panel discussion on Big Engineering Local Context, the importance of community consultation. And we're excited to welcome you to the final session in this Grand Finals series, celebrating all the hard work that the students have, over the last year, have been putting in. I wanted to share this quote as well from one of our panelists, Jenny Irvine. She says, "It reminded me how vast the engineering community is and how profoundly it impacts on communities around the world. It's a fantastic thing to be a part of," which I think really highlights that we are part of a truly influential community, and we have a responsibility to ensure that our impacts are positive. Now, to frame this influence, how this influence needs to be targeted, we borrowed Kate Raworth's donut economics model to help us explain that a little bit more. So the model here explains that there's a social foundation in which all human beings should expect as a minimum quality for life. This describes things like access to water, food, jobs, and education, a safe and secure home. And if this foundation is not met, then people live in poverty. The model also explains that there's an ecological ceiling, which places a limit on the amount of resources that we can consume and pollution that we can put into the environment. So these are things like fresh water withdrawals, biodiversity loss, ocean acidification. And if these ceilings are exceeded, then we may be triggering a tipping point towards planetary breakdown. And the measures of these social foundations and ecological ceilings, these are all internationally agreed metrics. So the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. And the sad truth is that today we're both exceeding this ecological ceiling, so using more of the planet's resources than it can sustain, as we're seeing with the climate crisis on our hands just now, whilst not providing the fundamental needs of all people. So creating inequality and an unfair distribution of the Earth's finite resources. An example of this is 40% of people do not have access to basic hand washing facilities with soap and water at home. We need to change what we're doing if we're going to be able to live in an ecologically safe and socially just space in that middle ground. So engineering, yes, it has been part of the problem in the past, but we view it as definitely at the heart of the solution in the future. And this is why we need global responsibility in the engineering sector. So to define that a little bit more, we need engineers who are aware of and seek to understand global interrelations and our interdependence. So understanding that engineering can be both positive and negative on the impacts it has on people and the planet. And we need engineers who strive for social and ecological justice through their work, being acutely aware of their role of the role engineering has in human development. And we need engineers who are constantly asking, how can we do this better? Engineers who are able to apply a systems thinking approach that is inherent in a lot of sort of traditional engineering, so the technology and the infrastructure, but also to the context that the engineering will be implemented in. So how will the environment be impacted? How will people be impacted? And to achieve this conscientious workforce of the future, the current education system needs to change to meet the requirements of the future. The Engineering for People Design Challenge is a response to the need to embed global responsibility into education. This is our flagship and award-winning Engineers Without Borders UK initiative, which began in 2011. And it presents students with an opportunity to design creative solutions to real-world problems, and in doing so, grapple with the fundamentals of design and the role that engineering plays in human development. More than this though, it's also about creating a paradigm shift, that moment when someone realizes that this is what engineering is all about. It's about solving problems for the vast majority of people, not just the few. And since the UK began delivering the Design Challenge in 2011, we have partnered with 9 community organisations. And the communities we partnered with this year, as I hope a lot of you are aware, is Makers Valley in Johannesburg, South Africa. And a sneak peek to the future, next year we'll be partnering with revisiting one of our old partners, EcoSwell in Peru. Many of these 40,000 students who participated have now gone into the professional world with that understanding in mind about the importance of having people at the heart of their designs. And some of whom they've volunteered to review the Design Challenge reports of the next generation. Engineers Without Borders is a movement, and we're incredibly proud of the community that we have that stayed with us throughout by registering as members and getting involved in our volunteering opportunities. We're so impressed and proud at this ever-growing scale of this Design Challenge and the impact it's also having. And we're incredibly proud to say that in 2019, we partnered with Engineers Without Borders South Africa and Engineers Without Borders USA to create and deliver this Design Challenge, which is further helping to deliver the student-centered curricula at scale. And through this partnership, this year, this Design Challenge has been launched in 38 universities across three continents in 8 countries. And we've delivered 35 launch lectures. We've involved multiple disciplines such as civil engineers, robotics and mechatronics, business students, AI and computer scientists, product design students, to name but a few. And we've impacted over 7,000 students in the process. So this is what's happened. This is what's happened already. But what has been the impact of this so far? Well, we asked you, the students, to complete a baseline and endline survey of your experiences in the Design Challenge. We wanted to take a minute just to share some of these results with you. So here are some of the responses when we asked you, what are your intentions after graduation, and has the Engineering for People Design Challenge influenced this? So from one of the students here, the challenge has taught me more about the issues of sustainability, environmental conservation, and more about the importance of a community. Now I want to work for a company that is heavily involved in solving issues addressed by the Sustainable Development Goals so as to provide a better future for all people around the world. And from another student, the Design Challenge has significantly changed my outlook towards how engineers can help to solve global problems. This has given me a clear idea of the kind of mindset I would want to have as a working professional. So their reflective quotes are speaking about taking these lessons from the Design Challenge and understanding that this is a mindset that should be taken into all and any professional working environment, and understanding that the power you have in wanting to create change can be influential in your working space. And alongside this, we asked you and your peers to rate your skills on a scale from 1 to 5, from poor to excellent, before and after taking part in the Design Challenge in a variety of topics. Taking an average of all the students who completed both surveys, we saw that there was an increase in all the areas from between 9 to 23% across these categories. And while it's kind of rewarding for us to see what you demonstrated this growth in these areas, it's also great to be able to reflect on your own developments throughout the year. These are critical skills for engineers to have working in the sector. And I think I can say with confidence that prospective employers are always interested to hear examples of how you've successfully managed projects and overcome difficulties in that process. This could have been, for example, having to pivot a design idea when realizing maybe it wasn't as fit for context as you originally thought, or dealing with difficulties in a team and working with conflicting perspectives in a project. Your ability to communicate your idea effectively and appropriately to the audience or stakeholder is an integral skill. And I can say comfortably that from the teams that I've seen in the pitches in this grand final series, they've definitely done this effectively and adapted incredibly well to delivering through Zoom, delivering remotely. And on that note, working remotely and managing a team from a remote setting is becoming more and more common in the professional world. And you've all demonstrated great competence in this space. These are definitely lessons you'll be able to pull out in the future and reflect back on as well. The support from our partners and funders is what has enabled over 7,000 students the opportunity to engage in the Engineering for People Design Challenge. They've been influencing the education system and creating globally responsible engineers. And this truly could not have been done without your support. We're so proud to have you as partners that are aligned with our mission and want to influence the sector so positively. Not only have they helped fund the design challenge, but they've also been lending their expertise, time and knowledge as reviewers and judges in this process as well. We'd also like to say thanks to our incredible academic community who have been a true pleasure to meet with and speak with throughout the year and are so dedicated to their students' development and to prepare them for the future and create a more equitable future for all. And also to the reviewers and mentors who are made up from our Engineers Without Borders membership, people who have registered on our website to find out about these volunteering opportunities and more. These reviewers, these 250 reviewers from 33 countries, they've volunteered an estimated over 500 hours collectively, providing 420 reviews of students' reports. And to us, this shows that the design challenge is something that really resonates within the sector and that people understand the value in what we're achieving. And thank you to our expert pool of judges as well. These are the judges who have deliberated and challenged one another in deciding the 6 nominated teams, and then laterally and subsequently rather the overall award winners as well. So thank you for all those who have made this design challenge possible. I'd also like to thank the Makers Valley community. This year they've helped us create what we believe to be the best design brief to date. And in a moment, I'm going to be joined on stage by Simon and Chris from Makers Valley. I'll be welcoming questions from the audience. So please feel free to type in any questions you would like using the Q&A feature, asking them about maybe their experiences or careers or life in Makers Valley. So you can see Chris on the top right of the screen here just now. He's a chemical engineer, entrepreneur, and innovator. And his mission is to use his knowledge, skills, and resources to help people both locally and internationally. And at the bottom center of the screen just now, we have Simon Mason, who is an aspiring change maker. He works to enable a well-being economy in Makers Valley by reducing inequalities through partnership building, mixed income development, and early childhood development. Just before we bring them to stage though, we have an update video of what's been happening in the community since Engineers Without Borders visited last year, which we're excited to share with you now. So please, if you have any questions, fire them into the Q&A during this video.
Hello students, this is Rory and Tobili here from the Makers Valley Partnership. We just wanted to send you a message to say a huge congratulations for being part of this EWB initiative. We are so excited to see your amazing ideas.
Thank you so much for partaking in this wonderful event. I, as myself, who's recently just started working in Makers Valley, your projects have given me much insight and understanding how you guys have understood Makers Valley as an area and how we as people working in this area can actually take your ideas and what you've worked on to further contribute to the well-being of our area.
Exactly, the well-being economy to us is super important, and obviously with this pandemic and the way it's affected us, we've had to rethink how we engage with the community. Our space, the VY Commons, which is usually a co-working space, has had to be transformed into a kitchen to provide food to the community. So the well-being economy and just the concept of looking after each other during this pandemic, but even post, is really at the core of what we believe in. And I think it's been so cool to have engineers that really use empathy in the way they design and to be part of this initiative and to be working on our program as a whole.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for such a great work that you guys have done in terms of putting together the designs and everything, and we really appreciate it as Makers Valley Partnership.
I just wanted to talk about the community element of engineering design and product design and say how important it is to find a good balance that incorporates a practical way of designing machinery or equipment, especially mechanical, that is easy to understand, low cost, and that is kind of easy to repair too. The community element's important, so it's very important to know that this project can work relatively low cost, and particularly at this time, I think COVID is also, the coronavirus scare has also made us more aware of many issues concerning the environment particularly, and making community and environment work together better so that it's accelerated the process and perhaps held up a mirror to ourselves to realize that we can actually change things and make them better in a fairly sort of with a simple approach. So I wish you all well. I hope it goes well. I hope I haven't chatted too long, and look forward to hearing the results, and good luck.
Some different ideas coming up.
Like moving into the shop first of all. Yeah.
That brought in a lot of ideas. We knew we couldn't just sell sorbet, so we started innovating and bringing in some juices.
The smoothie bowls.
Working on a smoothie bowl also.
And we've been looking to hire as well, because we hiring like our part-time people around. So now we want to make them permanent, and yeah, that's what we're working on right now. And for the past, like you say, month or two, we've been busy with food parcels for Makers Valley and the food kitchen, serving wherever we can to help.
We have to juggle two things. We're trying to open the store on a Saturday, then during the week we're here doing this.
So that was like kind of interesting, really getting involved and seeing how everyone in every small business and big business are helping out in the community. So yeah.
Hi students, congratulations for being a part of the program. We're super excited to see your designs.
Well done to all of you at EWB for getting through to this phase and this part of the deal. I think without organizations like EWB, the world would be a lot worse off than it is at the moment. So thank you. I think Victoria Yards is still on, without COVID-19, is on a very similar trajectory. I think that we are achieving what we set out to achieve, and finding our way as we go, and it's looking very positive. An engineer by default is, you apply design to a practical use. And I think where Engineers Without Borders specifically come in very valuable here is that there are serious constraints to how much money is available to come up with designs that are relevant to the population that surrounds us. And I think that all of this taken into account comes up with far more practical and affordable solutions.
Hi guys, Chris here. Congrats on completing the Engineering for People Design Challenge. It was really inspiring and thought-provoking as well to see your ideas and your designs. As a recent graduate myself, what I found the most interesting and the biggest lesson I learned in the transition from education to school is that one needs to practice good communication. So that means you need to clearly outline what it is that you want, what you expect, and what is expected of you. So that's the biggest lesson I learned, and it's helped me the most in my career so far. My advice for you going forward is that you need to take the skills that you have learned from the design challenge, such as collaboration specifically, because I've seen that it helps to bring together diverse teams, and it always helps in achieving a particular goal. For example, some of the projects that you guys put forward, a lot of them would be possible if you had a lot of people working together on that. So my advice is collaborate with as many people as possible, be as diverse as possible, and most importantly, keep engineering for the people. Look at the social, economic, and environmental side of things. So big ups and congrats and all the best for your future. Thank you.
So how people answer what makes a good life really and how do they get there is really around what kind of income they find themselves. But there's certain things that do seem common across all walks of life. And these are lots of the things that EWB's Design Challenge has looked at this year. It's things like safety, constant supply to water, a clean space, a space to produce vegetables or to have an access to food in some way. And really, that's what we hope to see realized from these ideas that have come about. And we really hope to see some of the ideas that come through the Design Challenge being taken forward in reality in this neighborhood where we really need it. Thank you so much for your participation in the Design Challenge, and we're excited to see who the finalists are.
Well, now this is your opportunity to ask questions to Makers Valley. So please put your questions into the Q&A feature on Zoom, on the chat box. And I'd like to now welcome Chris up onto the stage. It's great to have you with us today, Chris, at the Grand Finals. How are you doing today?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. I really enjoyed the video and I'm looking forward to this session very much. So thanks again.
Excellent. And I believe we have Simon with us as well. It was great listening to you in the panel discussion on Wednesday. How are you doing today?
Very well, Luke. Thanks a lot.
Glad to hear. So before we go into the questions from our audience, I've just got a couple of questions myself, perhaps for Chris. So outside of work itself at the Primal Spirits, what activities or resources or networks do you think could be most influential in you becoming the competent engineer you are today?
Sorry there, my screen's acting up. But in terms of work specifically, or outside work rather, I've seen that it really does help to be knowledgeable. So first today, mostly the fact that my results, so it's sort of searching for different ways to do things, looking at some self-embetterment kind of things. So that's mostly what are the activities that I feel have helped me to be the person I am today. The resources, of course, I couldn't go more. I mean, I couldn't agree more than say connectivity is probably the biggest resource that has helped me to be who I am today. I've seen that a lot of lessons that I've learned, a lot of people I've met, and a lot of experiences stem from the fact that I was able to be connected to a large audience, as it were, a large group of people from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, and they imparted, as I said, the knowledge onto me. They imparted their own experiences onto me, and I took it on personally, and it's helped me to be a better representative of myself, of my family, and a leader in many ways to my fellow peers. I've also looked at some of the networks that I've built here in Makers Valley, mostly the social entrepreneurs. Before hearing about Makers Valley or even being in the mix, I had no idea what a social entrepreneur was. So it was quite interesting to find out about that, to be a maker. That I found very interesting. It changed my idea of being process. I had a very one-dimensional view of what an engineer was, myself being one, and coming here, I said an engineer is some guy that's in the office and design, is working behind a computer all the time. I saw myself as a maker. An engineer is indeed a maker. So it helped me to fit in to the community and assimilate better with everybody here. And it's basically led me to the person who I am today. I'm just speaking of the concept of work. Of course, all things add up when you're looking at it from a professional standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, definitely these things that have helped me. Not in being in connection with people like you guys, for example, has changed my perception of engineering as a whole, but of the professional landscape as it's basically made me appreciate the power of connectivity and collaboration, and that for me has probably been the most valuable thing that's basically made who I am today.
It's really interesting, Chris, how deep a sort of holistic approach you've taken from that introspective self-betterment aspects of it to understanding the value of networks and then transforming yourself into a leader for other development roles as well. So thank you so much for sharing that the trajectory that you've been on as well. We have a question from Aness here, which is, what attracts you to the Makers Valley mindset? And I might ask Simon if you'd be able to respond to this. What is it that's so attractive about where you are?
Well, it's interesting because you started your intro to the whole day by speaking about Kate Raworth's Donut Economics, and I really enjoyed that. Thanks, because I think what really excites me about working in Makers Valley is before I even started doing any work in the neighborhood and started living there myself, there was already such a lot of potential for a well-being economy. And, you know, well-being is often misinterpreted as being kind of wellness or health and wellness, but well-being is really speaking to happiness and a deep sense of joy and happiness with life, and putting people and place, people and planet over profit. And I really think it was already going in the neighborhood that we started calling Makers Valley. But because of people joining like Chris and a lot of the other people that you saw in the video now, joining the Makers Valley vision towards a well-being economy, that's what continues to inspire me about working in the neighborhood and joining with other people towards this Makers Valley mindset, which is a well-being economy, really. Well, call it a mindset, call it a vision, but that well-being economy or donut economics, whatever you want to call it, that aspect is really unusual. And I think in Makers Valley in particular, it's an area I'd love, anyone that's on the call to come visit if they want to, when they're allowed to again. And you know, we're having a lot more opportunities for people to immerse themselves in the space and really see a kind of microcosm of what South Africa is about, almost like a test case of what we are doing in the broader world with regard to fourth industrial revolution, and what we're doing in South Africa, and how we're dealing with all of the dynamics that are coming up in the modern world.
Thank you. Those really interesting sentiments there, Simon. It's really great to hear that your focus point is around the person at the center of all this, rather than the system as a whole. Making sure that well-being or that happiness is the key objective. I might share the same question with yourself, Chris. What was it that was so attractive about Makers Valley to yourself?
Well, the thing that really attracted me to Makers Valley was the ethos behind it. The very first time I came across Makers Valley was actually by chance. I was bored and I was taking a walk, bumped into Simon. We had a brief chat. He told me to come the next Monday. I think it was on the weekend. And when I walked into VY Commons, which is where he worked from at the time, there was a question on the wall, and that question was, what is a good life really, and how do we get there? All right, more or less. I don't know if I said it properly, but seeing that kind of just like put me in a spot where I asked myself that question firstly, and the things that I thought were the right answer in my mind when I started seeing the type of work that Simon was involved in, not only himself, but the community that surrounds Makers Valley, the different people that are in Makers Valley, what they did. It helped me change my perspective of what this organization was. And it made me appreciate what it is that they were trying to do. So that's the main thing that really attracted me towards Makers Valley. I love the fact that it was community oriented. I think early in our discussions, Simon explained to me the value that the community would be creating. I mean, the value that Makers Valley would be creating to the community. We spoke about how you could empower the people here. We spoke about how it was different in terms of it wasn't something that was looking at gentrification or taking away from the community, but actually adding to it. So all of those elements came together. They really stuck with me because I'm a member of the community myself. And through all of that, basically, I felt like I belonged and really, really fell in love, as it were, with the whole concept.
Thank you so much, Chris. Again, it seems to really replicate what you were talking about, how you come to where you are today, that idea of people around you wanting to bring everyone up together and be a leader for them as well. It's really cool to hear that that's embodied by Makers Valley as well. I'm just going to sort of complete two questions together here. We have one from Francis and one from Ropafadzo. There's lots of constant changes that we're experiencing, and the COVID situation has potentially had an impact on how we might envision the future. Where do you see the world, or Makers Valley as well, in the next 5 to 10 years? And what roles do you think you'll be playing in that space? Ask Simon to start on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's so difficult with all the uncertainty to make accurate prognoses of where we're all going to be in a few months' time, let alone a few years. But what we have had to do as the Makers Valley Partnership immediately, actually, that the lockdown hit in South Africa, because we had quite a severe lockdown, where all the informal economies, all the makers, the people that were part of the kind of so-called gig economy, but in South Africa, there's a huge informal economy. None of them were able to make an income. So we had to switch to almost emergency relief, as you would do in a wartime. So it was food and packs for kids that weren't able to attend school, and masks and basic safety and sanitization equipment. and that we've had massive support, including from organizations like Nando's, which has been fantastic, to be able to provide food parcels and daily meals to thousands and thousands of people in the neighborhood. So that's been a big switch we had to make in the interim, and now what we're trying to do is combine it with the longer vision. So what we're actually very excited about at the moment is that we've got a recycling initiative that's combining with the food parcel, so people bring recycling at the same time as they collect a food parcel, and that's feeding into a community currency, which we've kind of had on the cards, but the mobilization that we've been able to see as a result of people mobilizing around the emergency response has been able to bring about this community currency initiative in a more tangible way. So I think what's been interesting is, as part of the whole realization of the immense need that's come about because of COVID-19, we've actually seen the well-being economy fast tracking in certain ways. And I think you've seen, I mean, if you go to We All, which is a UK based thing, you see similar initiatives like that in the UK that have actually used this as an opportunity to build back better. And I think that concept of building hope out of challenge really is a tangible possibility for all of us as change makers to carry out.
Thank you, Simon. That was incredibly uplifting and positively directed outlook. I really appreciate it. Give me chills. We have time just for one more question just now. This comes from Afnan. I asked Chris, how easy or hard has the Makers Valley found it to encourage the community to come together for growth? And have there been any challenges in creating that connection?
Well, it certainly at the beginning of it, from when I was involved, it was a bit difficult because not everybody from the community knew about Makers Valley. It's something that we talked about when the EW team was here, that the concept of Makers Valley, Makers Way and such were a bit foreign unless you were somehow involved with Victoria Yards or any of the other creative hubs that were at the time around. What Makers Valley did last year was they held a bunch of workshops at the various hubs that make up the Makers Way, so Victoria Yards, Skills Village, etc. And these workshops were aimed at teaching the members of the community different skills and basically new things that they wouldn't have learned elsewhere, or probably not at all if not for the work that Makers Valley did. Of course, Makers Valley tried to advertise that to them and received some success, relative success. Sometimes the output, I mean, the people that came through, the turnout was good. Many times it wasn't. So I think that stems from the fact that the communication around the whole Makers Valley project and what they were trying to do maybe did not reach the community, the target audience. I mean, I remember us having committees where we were each given like a section to look at in the community, like the religious section, the youth, the artists and stuff, just so we could penetrate those circles and get the word about Makers Valley to the people involved in those specific circles. So the communication aspect, I think, could have been done better. I mean, we tried our best, word of mouth, websites, etc. There were workshops, as I mentioned earlier, but to an extent, it was difficult in the beginning. I think once the project kind of took off, once the community was aware of such things, was aware of what is actually happening at Victoria Yards, what is happening in the community in Makers Way, then only was it a lot easier for the Makers Valley Partnership and everybody else involved to actually get the community involved. So I think we're at a point where people more or less know what's going on. The community is more involved than it was, let's say, about this time last year. So the challenges for me that would make it, that made it difficult for Makers Valley to kind of like get community outreach, as I said, was the communication. Perhaps people were scared, I think, or nervous about the whole concept. They thought that, particularly people that I knew, thought that the neighborhood was going to be taken over by big corporations. They were going to make it like a financial hub or arts and culture hub, and they wouldn't be included. That was the general attitude. So the communication was the biggest challenge. But I feel like we're at a point now where the work is there for them to see, and based on that, on them just seeing what's happening, it's a lot easier now for them to actually be involved in anything that's happening with regards to Makers Valley.
Thank you very much to both Chris and Simon for responding to these really interesting questions and providing some great insights to what it's been like in Makers Valley and what it's like to work with an organisation such as Makers Valley Partnership. And thank you for all your questions as well and putting Chris and Simon to the test. It's just time to say a huge thank you to both of you for joining us in the support of the creation of this design brief and all the way through our grand finals to now. It's been a true pleasure to work with both of you across this period. So as we, apologies. As we move to an online format for our grand finals series, the 37 teams which pitched their ideas to our panels in June, these judges then nominated 6 teams to progress to the finals round. And from here we had 6 teams report. From here we had 6 teams reports and pitching videos that were then put to a final round of judges. We'll be sharing the outcome of that final judging round after our interval. It's been incredibly rewarding and inspiring really to see all the student ideas that have been submitted and how well the teams have understood things like system thinking approaches and understanding the impact the designs could have on a community holistically. So if your team has been selected and nominated as one of the top six teams, you will receive an email in a moment which will contain a Google Hangout link. Please then join myself during this interval period and we'll brief you on the role this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to unveil to you the top 6 teams through this montage video of the work that's gone into this year's design challenge. Well, a huge congratulations to the six teams that have been nominated to progress to this final round. That's incredible to hear how well your designs have done in this challenge so far. So as I mentioned before the video, a representative from each of the teams will be receiving an email into their inbox just now. This will have a link to a Google Hangouts. I'll then be joining you during our interval and we can discuss what's going to be happening in the second half of the day. So we'll have a 10-minute break just now, during which we'll be exhibiting art projects from a separate stream of the Imperial College London student cohort. These students from the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Life Sciences were given the chance to explore the complex topic of international development using our real-world case study as the basis for their artwork. Their aim was to understand some of the complexities surrounding development and then depict these creatively as part of the Global Villages Visual Arts Challenge. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. I make that 12 past 4 UK time and look forward to seeing you at that point. Hope you have a nice screen break.
Hi there, welcome back from the break. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that I am not Luke. Just so you know, he's still busy with the representatives from the top 6 teams. So luckily for you, you've got me for this next bit. So I'm Katie Cresswell-Maynard. Luke gave a brief introduction to me earlier, but I'm the Chief Executive of Engineers Without Borders UK. I am so excited about today. I've been following this programme for the last 9 years. So you heard earlier that it kicked off in the UK in 2011. So I've been following this programme throughout that time, on and off, and I'm over the moon by how many students have now taken part. And that this year we've worked really hard with our partners, Engineers Without Borders South Africa and Engineers Without Borders USA, to bring it to students in South Africa and the US as well. I really, really hope that you've all enjoyed it and are inspired to further pursue becoming a more globally responsible engineer. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about globally responsible engineering, what it is, and practically what might be some of your next steps. So firstly, I'm going to share a secret with you. I'm going to break some of the rules of presentation here. I'm going to make some assumptions about you, my audience, which they tell you is dangerous to do as a presenter, as rule 101 is to start with where your audience are, and then they're more likely to follow you. This normally means making sure that you explain concepts or ideas in a bit more detail than you might do otherwise. But I've made a little bet with myself that given most of you have been involved in the Engineering for People Design Challenge for at the very least the last year, and I know some of the academics on the call have been involved for a bit longer than that, and if you haven't, you're attending because you're interested in this, I'm going to bet that you're already aware of and know about the types of things I would ordinarily need to cover when talking about global responsibility and why we need to be globally responsible. I'm going to bet that you already know our global population is increasing, that since 1950, the world's human population has increased 3 times, rising from 2.6 billion to the 7.8 billion people living on the planet today. And it's projected to increase even further by another 1.4% to peak at nearly 11 million in the year 2100. So I think you probably already know this and the challenges that faces us with. And I'm going to bet that you already know that despite our so-called technological advances and development, massive inequality still exists. So 2,153 people have more wealth than 60% of the whole global population. Let me say that again. 2,153 people have more wealth than 4.6 billion people who make up that 60% of the planet's population. I tried to do a little calculation for myself to work out what 2,153 is as a percentage of the global population, but it's a number so small that I had to take it to at least 5 decimal points for a number other than 0 to appear. So they represent 0.0000276% of the world's population. So I think you'll agree that it's evident huge inequality still exists in the world around us. And I think you already know that alongside all of this, we're facing some serious planetary challenges. Challenges such as climate change, fueled by burning fossil fuels, and ocean acidification as a result. These serious planetary challenges that we're facing, we know that human activity is a major contributing factor. Other aspects, like the loss of biodiversity due to our greater demand for land and pollution, reducing our environment's resilience to change, and bringing about the extinction of some of the other 8.7 billion animal species that we share the planet with. I'm going to bet that you've already also probably heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, may have already considered some of them as part of working through your engineering design process. And so I've also made a bet with myself that you're probably aware of, if not also heavily driven by, global responsibility principles. And Luke referred to these earlier. That's about achieving social justice for all with a minimum expectation of equitable access to the fundamentals for a healthy life. But doing that within the limits of the planet that we, and those 8.7 billion other animal species call home. So I'd just like to take us on a little sidestep to consider this planet we call home. And here she is. As an interesting fun fact for you, since the 2nd of November in the year 2000, not all human beings have lived on planet Earth. A small team of 6 people have been continuously posted on the International Space Station, orbiting the Earth, looking back upon it, advancing our scientific knowledge about Earth and space. So later this year marks 20 years that at least some of us have genuinely left home. 240 people from 19 different countries have had the privilege of taking the look back upon Earth. And it's said that the vast majority have had their desire to protect the Earth strengthened as a result. This is summed up pretty well in this quote from Russian cosmonaut Gennady Padaka, who has logged more cumulative days in space than anyone else over his 28-year career. He says we are genetically connected to this planet. And to the best of our knowledge, Earth is unique in its ability to support life as we know it. The past decade of astronomy has shown us that we are one among billions of worlds in the Milky Way galaxy. But our tangled web of geology, ecology, and biology makes this strange rock the only one in reach that's just right for humans. There really is no place like home. I don't know about you, but I'm going to make another assumption about you that you might feel the same way as me when I see these amazing photos we now have of planet Earth, due to our ability to leave and look back. These photos show how precious and beautiful Earth is in the wide expanse of space. And this really evokes a similar feeling in me, a strengthened desire to make sure our human impact on this planet is no longer a cause for its destruction, and a strengthened desire to make sure that every single human being has access to a similar quality of life. So I'm going to make an assumption that actually I don't need to talk to you about the need for global responsibility. I'm going to bet that you already know that, are convinced by it, and I would be preaching to the converted, as they say, if I were to do so. So I'm going to spend the next part of my talk talking about how. I'm actually hoping that, again, what I'm going to say isn't new to most of you. And if that's the case, what I do hope is that what I say gives you renewed ambition, renewed focus, and perhaps some new ways to describe and articulate what you already know. So how do we do global responsibility? How do we put global responsibility into practice? I'd like to start by coming back to the Sustainable Development Goals, because putting global responsibility into practice is embedded in looking at the Sustainable Development Goals as a whole. In other words, by thinking about how do we achieve them together, not just one by one. If we take a moment to reflect on the marking criteria for the Engineering for People Design Challenge, I'd like to point out what I mean by this. So in our marking criteria, we highlighted that for proposed ideas to be successful, consideration for the social, environmental, and economic aspects of context should be embedded throughout your engineering design process. And what we've really been looking for through the reviewing and judging process is how well you've understood this in the context of Makers Valley, and how well you've embedded and evidenced that understanding through your design process and decision making. We've drawn attention to social factors, and in doing so have highlighted that you might want to draw attention to social inclusion, both in who you are designing for and how you engage people in the process, to realise that how you design with people, perhaps rather than for them, is just as important as the technological innovation output you potentially would have previously prioritised. In particular, this attention to social factors asks that you really pay attention to those groups that are often marginalised. We've also drawn attention to economic factors, potentially asking you to think about how desirable and usable is your idea compared to alternatives. How would it really work in practice? How affordable is it? And can it reach a large number of people to change their lives? And by the same token, attention to the environmental impact is also pulled out in the marking criteria. For example, this ideally led you to think about the materials that you would propose. How much material is needed? Where does it come from? What impact does that have? How long do those materials last and what happens to them at the end of their life? We asked you to think about what pollutants might be released throughout the operation and operational lifetime of your proposed idea. What additional resources might be required to be consumed throughout. So these criteria speak to the how in terms of providing guiding principles about how we should approach tackling our engineering design process. But when we reflect back of this idea of tackling the Sustainable Development Goals together as a whole, we can see that these criteria, which I've just explained as guiding principles for how we should approach tackling our engineering design process, are actually themselves also contributing towards a what? A goal. So for example, some of you may have been working on, let's say, energy-related issues. In doing so, addressing one of the Sustainable Development Goals. So in this case, that would be Sustainable Development Goal 7, access to affordable and clean energy. But if you paid attention to the marking criteria and holistically embedded them into your approach, you may have also been contributing towards other Sustainable Development Goals that are equally as important. For example, Sustainable Development Goal 11, building sustainable and resilient communities. Achieved in part by ensuring your process is inclusive and that all voices are involved and present. The same goes for Sustainable Development Goals 5, gender equality, and 10, reduced inequality. There's clearly, when we're talking about Sustainable Development Goal 7, providing clean and affordable access to clean and affordable energy, there's clearly a link with Sustainable Development Goal 13, climate action. And when we're thinking about your material sourcing, pollution throughout the lifetime, resource consumption, what happens at the end of the life of your design idea, there are clear implications for Sustainable Development Goals 12, 14 and 15 about resource consumption, life below water and life on land. Realising this and recognising that whilst you might have a primary outcome you're working towards, there are many other outcomes you can also contribute towards if you take care to think holistically and pay as much attention to your approach and process as you do your final design. Using this holistic mindset that is conscious of this is putting global responsibility into practice. So what next? Hopefully what I'm saying is resonating with you and you get this concept. Global responsibility means taking a holistic approach and realizing that how we engineer or how we design or how we run our business is just as important as what the output is. In other words, the journey or the process is as important as the destination or the product. I'd also argue that the product isn't the end destination, but I'm just saying that in recognition that's often what we think about when we think about engineering design processes. So how do you do this? Well, I think most of you have already been doing this, whether you've realized it or not, thinking and acting in this way. But again, I'd like to offer you some food for thought and perhaps a different way of looking at it. So I'm sure and I hope it comes as no surprise to say that it starts with you. It starts with your mindset, your knowledge, your skill set, and then what actions you take. As individuals, the thing we have most control over and responsibility for is our mindset, our attitude, if you like. In defining the word responsibility, famous author Stephen Covey says, look at that word responsibility. When we break it down, we can see that it's made up of two words, response, ability. And by doing that, we can see that means it's the ability to choose our response. He goes on to say that highly proactive people recognize that responsibility. They don't blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. Their behavior is a product of their own conscious choice based on values, rather than a product of their conditions based on feeling. If we extend this into the global responsibility space, it places an active emphasis on the choices you make related to being more or less globally responsible. If we follow Covey's thinking, you can choose to be driven by social and environmental justice. You can choose to challenge and consistently ask, how can we do this better? And you can choose to challenge yourself and consistently ask, how can I do this better? Because these are all choices, to be globally responsible, we have to make active decisions to be these things, to think these things, and to be driven by these things. And it's important to note that others may have chosen to be driven by other agendas. Some of us may feel constrained and restricted in our ability to make these choices due to our life circumstances, injustices we may ourselves face. But whilst it may be difficult to accept this, Covey's point is that even when the odds are stacked against you, you still have control over how you respond and what your mindset is. And that is your responsibility. Exploring mindset further, we reflect on how our mindset affects how we think about others and influence them. Translating that into the terminology I've been referring to regarding globally responsible engineering and this idea proposed by Covey about the choices we can make, I'd like to phrase this as the choice to design with rather than to design for. In doing so, recognizing that other people have agency. So to explain that in a different way, whilst we may feel a moral obligation to address social injustice, or we may be angered by it, we have to take care with this desire to help and how that translates into our actions. Devoting our attention, our skills and abilities to helping others is a powerful and wonderful thing. But recognize sometimes your ability to help another is due to your relative privilege and power, which are social constructs, sometimes neglecting the fact that at the heart of it, we're all human beings. And if as a result your actions translate to do change to people, this often has a detrimental effect. When we seek to help, we're often looking for problems to solve. And this is the classic way we describe engineers as problem solvers. But let's just reflect on the impact of definition by problem or deficiency. It completely neglects to identify what's already there, what's already functioning and probably functioning pretty well. This is particularly important when we're looking at how we can solve the problems that people are facing. If we break that statement down, the underlying message can sometimes mean to some unintended detrimental effects. Firstly, there's a we, the problem fixer, the engineer, the designer, the expert, and a them, the person or people with the problem that needs fixing. So immediately what you've done with that mindset is you've established an us and a them, if nothing else in your mind at least. But this can then translate into how you interact with these other people, and that risks destroying the opportunity for collaboration and co-creation, which, as I'm sure those of you who participated in the Engineering for People Design Challenge have come to appreciate is so important to the success of any engineering design. But perhaps most dangerously, what you risk is shaping the mindset of the people you're attempting to work with or help. So if you reflect on that yourself for a moment, if you are defined by your problems, if you are defined by your deficiencies, what impact does that have on how you feel about yourself, on how you feel about where you live and the people that are your neighbours and your friends? Unfortunately, huge amounts of research has proven that one of the detrimental long-term impacts that has resulted from the aid paradigm is that when you, your family, your community, or perhaps your entire nation has been consistently defined by your problems, this starts to become internalized and believed to be the only thing that defines you. As a result, active citizenship fades in the face of thinking that the only way to overcome your problems is for external support to come and fix them for you. I hope you'll agree that's not what you'd want to happen. And actually that sounds like creating more problems rather than fixing them. So what can we do differently? Well, and I'm not alone in saying this, I'd like to suggest let's reframe the question, and in doing so, reframe our mindset. So rather than the question, what can I do to help? Or what are the problems people are facing that we can solve? What if instead we started by asking, what's working well? What's stopping it from working better? What or where are the opportunities for change? Immediately, if I'm on the receiving end of those questions, I feel as though this is a collaborative effort between you and me, the engineer or designer, and the person you're trying to help. You're not trying to fix me. And there's respect for my lived experience and recognition that I've likely been trying to find my own way to improve things. This is called starting with what's strong, not what's wrong, and speaks to the heart of what we mean by saying, frame your mindset to design with rather than design for. And for those of you that have participated in this year's design challenge, I hope you'll have seen that there's a lot that's strong about Makers Valley. It's a vibrant, dynamic place where there's a real sense of community spirit and community action driving change in the neighbourhood for the better. So this is about being aware that particularly if you are not the person experiencing that social justice that we want to address, your intervention is best intended when framed in terms of designing with rather than designing for, so as not to undermine any existing strengths or agency that those at the receiving end of that injustice have, and to recognise that you should also feel the benefit in engaging in this process. It's not a completely selfless act. This feeling of how to approach addressing social injustice and what it can be like to be on the other end of receiving help is summed up pretty well by this quote from the Aboriginal Australian Lila Watson. If you've come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Addressing your own mindset is important, but it's just the first step on the path to becoming more globally responsible. And don't neglect that this will require continuous reflection and continuous attention. So next is recognizing the importance of being informed and being competent, referred here as your know-how and your skill set. So firstly, it's worth stating that you should be aiming to continuously learn. Continuously learn from what you and others have done. Be open and transparent about both the successes and the failures that you've experienced to drive collective knowledge forward and continuously improve how we approach engineering design. And then there's some really specific things that you could do as well to increase your understanding of. These are often uncomfortable, complex, or uncertain issues that can be challenging to grasp, but they are really important. Firstly, being aware that inequality and injustice exists. It's an unfortunate fact of life right now and plays into all of our lives every day through the intersection of our privileges and the power dynamics we are subjected to. Understand why it exists and also understand that inequality and injustice are social constructs. They've been created by human beings, and that means that they can be dismantled and changed by human beings. With the amazing resource of the internet at our disposal, there really are no real excuses or barriers anymore to accessing research, insight, and information on this to improve our understanding. Secondly, to build on this point, find out about the tools and techniques that you can use to be more inclusive. Throughout this whole process, we've talked to the importance of designing with rather than designing for. And at the heart of this sentiment is facilitating an inclusive approach. Again, there are plenty of resources out there to improve your understanding of A, recognizing the diverse needs people have in engaging in a process such as this, and B, the ways in which you, as facilitator of the engineering design process, can ensure all voices are included. It's not just the loud ones that dominate, and that those voices of the often marginalized or forgotten are also heard as valued. What I'd like to point out there is don't forget that voices that are often forgotten includes the voices of future generations who, understandably, because they're not here right now, can't voice their opinion in the current day. Other tools you'll find useful to know about are those that allow you to assess and balance multiple factors important for your design and to support your decision making. Many of you, I know, used scoring matrices in your decision making to weigh up different designs against each other and against your design criteria. Well, you'll be pleased to know that there are a whole host of tools out there, often under the banner of multi-criteria assessment, that can help you with this. Seek them out, get to know them, and most importantly, get to know their limitations. It's all very well plugging some numbers in and then picking the idea with the highest score, but do you really understand that those scores are based on your human judgment of those scores? It's not always scientific in the way we might like to rely on a number as an outcome, as we would in a mathematical equation, for instance. So your judgment based on your understanding of the limitations of the tools you are using is paramount. And finally, continue to explore what already exists. As I said at the beginning, we're facing significant social and environmental challenges, so we know that business as usual is no longer acceptable. There's a lovely quote that boosts many an engineer's confidence that says, "Engineers bring dreams into reality." If this is true, then our dreams of achieving a socially more equitable and ecologically sustainable way of life on planet Earth really do need alternatives to be offered. And many already exist. They just don't get the attention they deserve because they're new, different, perhaps they've not come from those traditional sources of expertise, or there aren't any design standards currently associated with them because no one's funded the research yet. So I'd encourage you to have fun continuing to explore what alternative materials, designs, products, infrastructure ideas are already out there, and build on that drive to continue to innovate and to continue to improve. But ultimately, it all comes down to what you do. How do you then act? There's a lot more I could say on all of these subjects, but to put it simply, I really like this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. And in doing so, this refers back to Covey's original point about responsibility. So Martin Luther King Jr. is quoted as saying, "You're not only responsible for what you say, but also for what you do not say. By the same token, you're responsible for what you do, but also responsible for what you do not do." So be conscious and exercise the choice that you have on what to act on and also what you don't act on. Reflect on what that says about you, your principles and your motivations. And if I had to pull out 3 things to focus on in terms of how to act, I'd highlight the following. Empathize. If you're genuinely driven to address social and environmental justice, empathize. Seek to understand first before drawing your own conclusions. Actively listen. Active listening is all about empathizing, building trust, and enabling you to really ensure that you're embedding your engineering design skills into something worthwhile, with meaning, purpose, and potential for impact. It's about genuine listening and not listening in order to confirm any existing hypothesis you might have, often known as confirmation bias. It requires an open mind. And as a tip, there's another great quote that says, if you're thinking about the next question, you're not really listening. Easier said than done, I know, but I've certainly learned a lot myself by reflecting on this last point. And finally, as I've said throughout, be as deliberate about how you do things as you are about what you're trying to achieve, because achievement of sustainability and equity is founded in the process. So to summarize, if your answer to this question, you want to change the world, is yes, then the place to start is with you. Reflecting on yourself, your mindset, your know-how and skill set, and your actions. But most importantly is remembering that no one person can do this on their own. So if you want to change the world and be a more globally responsible engineer, the most important thing you can do is work together. Discuss with others on all the things I've mentioned and more. Look to collaborate. If you're an educator, reflect on how you can facilitate more in your teaching style to challenge your students to explore uncomfortable topics. If you're a business leader, review your culture, your practice, and look for ways for a more collaborative, inclusive, and sustainable approach. How is this embedded in your internal culture? And how does that impact on the practice your employees then deliver? I hope I provided you with some interesting food for thought. perhaps some ideas for new lines of self-reflection, and maybe even some fun facts you can share with others. So I'd like to thank you so much for listening, and now I'm going to hand you back over to Luke, who's hopefully waiting with the representatives from the top six teams to explore their experiences.
Thank you, Katie, for a truly inspiring speech on global responsibility there. And thank you for identifying those tools that we can each use to contribute to make a more socially just and ecologically sustainable future. And if you want to join a community of people who share this goal, you can join our movement. You can join our movement by registering online, where you'll be joining both engineers and non-engineers, from those who've been involved in the organization since university to those who have joined more recently, spurred on by their interest to do more in the light of this climate crisis and sustainable development goals. Join our growing community to add your voice to a movement that is striving to serve all people and the planet better than ever before. And if you're currently at university and you want to get involved, our next slide sort of demonstrates that our lively chapters in universities around the UK also help to put global responsibility at the heart of the engineering community. Chapter members connect with other engineers at the universities and around the country. They shape their engineering careers and the future of engineering therein. Chapters also host a range of events such as panels and debates with academics and members of industry. They have trips and independent projects and outreach activities. Each chapter is unique, but overall they build the skill of a globally responsible engineering in their members. So I encourage you to look for that opportunity on our website or by reaching out at this email address. Okay, we're now ready to meet our representatives from our top 6 teams. So if they can please let themselves be known by raising their hand using that little icon at the bottom of their screen, my colleague will promote you to stage just now. We're going to be hearing from these representatives that have been nominated by our judging panel, risen through the ranks after the pitching stage. And we're going to understand more about their journey through the Engineering for People Design Challenge and what it's been like. So I believe we have our representatives on stage with us now. And happy to share the stage with you here. So thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you can hear me okay. We've been incredibly impressed by the journey you've taken to get to this stage, and it's been incredibly exciting for us, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Our judges were incredibly impressed with the work that you've done and demonstrating an awareness and understanding of the importance of having sort of the community at the heart of your design, people at the heart of your design, and a greater understanding of the impact that engineering can have. So I have a few of you on the call with me just now, which is great to see. So thank you very much. And I'm also loving that Waste for Water is representing their logo again, always strong. So I have a few questions to ask you about your journey that you've gone on throughout this design challenge. We're really interested to know more about your own reflections in this. I might start with Nadima. What in particular do you think you've learned through this process?
I think I've learned about how exactly we can really apply the skills that we learn in our course into real life and see that things actually are more than solving a problem. It's more about how we can get everybody involved and everybody to try and find the best solution for each individual rather than a solution to the technical problem that's at hand.
It's really interesting. So rather than coming in with a product, you're trying to find out what people need. And Paolo, I might ask the same question to yourself. What is it that you felt you've learned through this process?
Well, the most important thing which I've learned in process of creating WGS is actually we have to think outside the box. We have to use the skills we already have and learn new skills, learn new things in our life just to create something better and better and to help people, to cooperate with them and making the world better.
I like that. Going above the information in front of you and looking for that extra piece of research. Luca, what do you think you've learned through the process of this design challenge? Can you hear me okay, Luca?
Sorry, I cut out for a minute there.
No problem. I was just wondering, what is it you've learned through the process of the Engineering for People Design Challenge?
Yeah, so we've really, as a team, learned the importance of working as a team and nurturing other skill sets for the benefit of the whole project, you know, really having no ego from the start. We've learned the importance of not stereotyping as well, leading to preconceptions that can negatively influence the design process. So in order to stay as objective as possible, we've also learned, you know, researching thoroughly, which sometimes we were guilty for not doing, which can lead you down dead-end roads and waste time and make things less efficient. So overall, really, the importance of empathy, teamwork, and overlooking preconceptions of Africa and the world holistically definitely enable the biggest leaps in our learning.
It's really interesting. I like how you recognise that there's different strengths within the team that you're able to capitalise on. Thanks for sharing. Shane, I was just wondering if you could have your 2 cents on this topic.
And what we learned, well, we learned a lot about like the life of an engineer, how the fact that you have to approach an environment that you may have never been in before. Like we're from Ireland and we have to do a project about South Africa. You really have to learn about the place in order to really apply an engineering mind to it. I think that's the really important thing, is that you have to learn about the community, learn about its strengths, its resources it can use to solve the problems that it has. And then you can apply your engineering mentality. I think that was a great thing that we've learned from this experience.
It's great to hear, Shane. So it's about sort of removing those sort of maybe biases that we all hold as individuals, and making sure you're caring about understanding the community you're designing for. Thank you. And do we have, I'm not sure the camera's available, do we have Luke Alderson on the call as well?
Yeah, we do. Apologise for the lack of the camera.
So, just wondering just your thoughts on what you've done through the process.
I think, well, firstly, from a practical point of view, I think we've learned how to manage a project at arm's length, as it were, due to the COVID crisis. I think that's been valuable. I think we've all learned about 3 different forms of video conferencing software packages. But I think mainly I think we've learned how to effectively play to the strengths of individual team members. So I know throughout our process, we had team members who were more confident in presenting, those who were confident with research, etc. And I think allocating those skills to various areas of our project really, really helped.
Thank you for sharing. And we also have Kenzie that's joined us as well. It'd be great to know your thoughts on what you've learned through the design process as well, if that's okay.
Just to be clear, I'm representing team 134 from Strathclyde instead of 138. And I know there's a mix-up from that before. But to answer the question, communication was a big part of our team's kind of learning outcome, especially because of COVID, but also the fact that we are a very international group in this project. Myself and my teammate Shannon are from Canada, and our other 2 teammates are from Italy, and one was in Glasgow. So it was a lot of making sure people could attend meetings, scheduling around different time zones, and then very clearly communicating. Because of the time difference, we needed to make sure that we had ideas and points down at least a few days before we had to get something ready, just to make sure that we were fully prepared. So that was definitely a challenge that was really interesting to overcome.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. You're working as a multinational global enterprise and delivering this. So it's been great to see how you've managed to overcome those challenges. I'd ask you again, Mackenzie, just about the sort of learning from that international sort of delivery setting. Is there any learning from this that you feel you would take forward into your career or into research?
Yeah, so it's always great to get to start working with people from both different corporations and just different places in the world as early as possible. Different cultures and different places in the world have different ways of learning and different ideas. So it's really interesting, the creative kind of innovations that you can come up with when there's a broader, more diverse point of view. So I think that's really important to bring into future in working in different corporations and different teams. And I think it just really gives you confidence to start communicating effectively with people who haven't exactly had the same experience as you.
I like the diversity of mind, diversity of ideas. That's great. And Powell, have you thought about how you might be able to take some of this learning forward?
Well, I think the main thing which I would like to take forward is my team leading skills, which I've learned about a lot during the process as well. And I think it will help me to understand the other people, the other engineers as well during my work in, I don't know, wherever I work. And, you know, just to understand how the whole thing is going on, how to help the others if they struggle with something, how we can use all the resources. That's what I think will benefit in the future from this challenge.
That's great to hear. A sort of adaptability in that leadership role. Really, really interesting. And Nadima, is there much learning you're wanting to take forward from this design challenge?
I think it was the whole time management kind of thing, because I had to do most of it myself. And I think that the fact that you have to look further than the initial research, there's a lot more that you can get from that when you actually try and, I don't know, pretend as if you were going to go there and really look at what places you'd potentially you wouldn't want to be there, and you'd want to help them kind of fix that issue that they have. Because I think it's important for me to see like equality and access to engineering. So if I wouldn't want to have to live like that, why should somebody else?
We all have a right to a certain standard of living, and it sounds like as a community we're aiming to provide that, which is great. Shane, do you have any thoughts about how you might take this learning forward?
Well, I think I have a different approach to going into group work. I used to dread it beforehand, but I think working in groups, you learn so much about yourself. You learn about your strengths and your weaknesses. And from people who have those strengths, you can learn more from them. So I think it's the best way to learn about yourself, learn about what you can improve on. That's the best way to improve on those things. I think that's the greatest thing I've learned so far.
A very introspective, reflective response. Thank you, Shane. And Luca, so much learning you're taking forward from this design challenge?
Yeah, so something we came across is I'd probably take forward the knowledge that a thorough cost-benefit analysis is incredibly important, and it's more important to include the social and environmental factors within that, which is something we were previously quite guilty for overlooking. We've also, as it's already been mentioned, learned lots of, due to COVID, learned some remote working skills, you know, and improvised, adapted and overcome those. So there's, we now have an arsenal of tools at our disposal that we're much more used to using to work remotely in the future. And generally, as I mentioned before, just the importance of being tolerable and working in a team and embracing those diverse skill sets and personalities just for the benefit of the project as a whole.
Obviously, we've gone through a similar situation in going remote, and yeah, I think learning to be agile in this space is an incredibly useful skill set moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to use it in the future, since there's a whole kind of push to work from home as well. It's incredibly important that we've had this experience now.
I'm glad to hear. And we still have Luke Alderson there. I was wondering your thoughts on how you're taking this learning forwards.
I think this is probably the first design project that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of where there's been such a heavy emphasis on the environmental, community and social aspects of it, as opposed to just the technical. I think certainly in design projects going forward, that's going to be second nature to me now, and no doubt to my whole team. I think it's certainly provided me with a different perspective on that. So those will be considered in the future.
It's great to hear that some of this is really embedded in your work in the future. So I'm just going to ask you each if there's any advice that you would pass on to someone starting this design challenge next year. Maybe Nadima, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think that it's important to just carry on and actually just try and give it a go, because I know at the beginning I was thinking that, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing and I don't know if there's going to be a point to it. And I think regardless of how things end, I'm really like appreciative and happy that I actually took part in it, because I learned so much and I got self-confidence in myself that you know, I'm capable of doing things and that I'm capable of being an engineer that's going to have a difference in the world. And I think it's something to just keep pushing on with, because it's a lot of work to put in, but it's so worth it. Yeah, you get some really like priceless skills from it.
That's great advice. I like that. And Powell, do you have anything to compliment or contrast what Nadima has said?
Well, the thing which I would like to advise to the students in the next year is don't try to be Elon Musk or Bill Gates. Just be the best version of yourself and do what you feel like you want to do. Just go with the thing you want to create, and just find a motivation, and don't give up. Just do what you feel. Even if it will fail, but then you will get some experience, you will get some knowledge, and you will do things better in the next time.
Like that. You've got a career in motivational speaking as well, if anything goes wrong with the engineering. And Mackenzie, any advice for our next year's students, next year's cohort?
Yeah, to build on what the other two have said, it's really important to pick something that you're really interested in, you're passionate about. It makes the entire process both a lot more interesting for yourself, and it gives you some really great motivation. As well, make sure that you're really focusing on how the community would take your idea. If it doesn't end up working out in the community, it's not feasible, people don't really understand your design, it's not going to end up working in the end. So in terms of the triple bottom line, really focus on the social aspect of what you're trying to create and trying to implement in a real life situation. That will help you a lot, I think, in the design process.
That's great. So making sure you understand there's a need before you go in with design. That's great. And Luca, do you have any advice for students next year?
Of course. So I'd probably say to them to first things first, just ensure that the user's needs are fully understood before even thinking up any ideas, because that will help you so much to send you on the right trajectory. Pinpoint the problems and put yourself in the position of those people, and try to think of permanent long-term solutions. 54% of startup projects fail, so you don't want to add to that statistic. Also, make sure you use the resources well, because you guys at EWB provide excellent resources with the booklets, videos, which we really used heavily to drive our project. So I'd say to future people, make sure they use that. And again, it's just really important to identify all team members' strengths and abilities, and ensure that you exploit and utilize that to help build a stronger proposal. Yeah, make sure the design can be sustained by locals through proper education and supply of the correct equipment. Because I'd say at the end of the day, a long-lasting design is one of the most important criteria to achieve. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of my blueprint for the future. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you, Luca.
Yeah, and thank you, EWB.
And Shane, any advice to complement what we've heard so far?
Well, I'm going to have to repeat what has already been said many times before, is that, yeah, identify a true need. Look into, do your research on what is happening in the community and what needs to be improved upon. And like to add to that, I'd say like start off with a simple approach, just one simple thing that you want to improve on, because I can guarantee you in any project, it gets more complicated, never more simple. And from that, like you can add your things on later and later. Instead of making it really complicated at the start, you can just start with a simple approach, a simple goal, and then work your way to a solution.
Thank you very much, Shane. And lastly, we'll just turn to Luke for any advice for next year's students.
I think I'd just say never underestimate how far you can come in a competition like this. I think there's a lot of bright people out there who wouldn't necessarily put themselves forward for something like this, perhaps just due to a lack of confidence, not necessarily a lack of ability. So I would just say that if you have an idea that you believe has the potential to help a community or even an individual, you should pursue it as far as you're able.
And great to hear from all of your different opinions and this amazing advice that you've shared with us as well. So thank you all for taking the time to share with us your thoughts and reflections on your year so far. We're really looking forward to staying in touch with you, with Engineers Without Borders, for the coming years, and we look forward to seeing how your careers progress as well, hopefully in line with all this great advice that you've given the next year's students. We are now entering the moment that lots of people have been waiting for. This is the culmination of the Engineering for People Design Challenge, where we will be announcing our People's Prize, which has been voted on by the public. We'll also be announcing our Runners-Up Prize and the Grand Finals Prize as determined by our judging panel. At this stage, I'm going to pass you over to Katie, who's going to, as part of our final judging panel, will help announce these winners. Whenever you're ready, Katie.
I'm here. Thanks, Luke. So that was so lovely to hear from the representatives of the top 6 teams. It always brings a smile to my face, hearing all of the different student reflections on what this program has meant for them throughout the year. It makes it all worth it from our perspective as the people that are working hard in the background to put this program together. So thank you very much for sharing those lovely reflections with us. So here we are, and what an honour. As I've said, I've been following this programme on and off for the last 9 years and was so excited this year to finally become part of the judging panel. It's been incredibly exciting to see just how hard you've all worked at embedding social, environmental and economic factors into your engineering design and decision making. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the judges when I say there's been some really tough decision making that's had to be made to get to this point. So for those of you that may have forgotten or have just joined you, I just want to recap on the process we've been through to get to this point. So we had a grand total of 1,025 teams participate from across the UK and Ireland this year, starting as far back as last September 2019, when coronavirus was something none of us had ever heard of. From those 1,025 teams, 87 teams were selected for submission between January and April this year by your academics. So they had the opportunity to propose up to 5 teams from each institution to get through to that grand final round. We then had those 250 reviewers from a whopping 33 countries read, score and provide feedback on all your ideas. So not only helping us to find out who would get through to the next round, but also to make sure that each of you had some solid feedback from professionals working in engineering. So hopefully you can see through that feedback just how important it is to take account of social, environmental and economic factors in engineering design in the real world. So as a result of that process, we had 37 of that original 1,025 teams that took part who had the opportunity to pitch your ideas in this grand finals of the 2020 Engineering for People Design Challenge. So whilst there's a competitive element to all of this, I'd first like to have a huge round of applause for all those students that have participated this year. So please join me at home in celebrating the learning journey of all the students that all the students have been on, and hopefully have all made their first step to becoming more globally responsible engineers. So now here we go. I'm really excited to be able to announce the People's Prize winner. So just as a little reminder, the 37 teams that were selected to the review process were put to a public vote. So this is the first time we've done it this way. Normally we host the votes on the day of the physical event, but moving online gave us the opportunity to really open this out. And I'm so excited to see that we got a whopping 3,123 votes in total for those 37 teams over just 4 weeks of voting. So, X Factor, watch out, we're hot on your heels. And great to see so many shares and reshares over social media taking it further. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to announce that the winning team of the People's Prize, so remembering it was all 37 teams that potentially are up for winning this prize, with a final share of the votes of 566 votes in total, were Team 140 from the University of Sheffield. So congratulations for those who are attending today who haven't had the opportunity to see all the students' designs. This team's design was based on creating affordable and sustainable housing through the regeneration of a former industrial building into an apartment complex, providing housing for up to 30 local families. And all the design ideas are still available on our website if you want to go and check them out afterwards. So well done, Team 140. You'll receive an educational bursary to share between you and further your journey to becoming globally responsible engineers. Moving swiftly on to the prizes decided by our judges. So again, just to recap that process. So of those 37 teams that got to pitch in the finals, they were split into 6 pitching groups, and each had 10 minutes to present their idea to a panel of expert judges, those 24 expert judges, followed by 10 minutes of questioning whilst being watched by up to 2 other student teams. And again, moving online gave us this opportunity to involve more judges, and so that other student teams could see each other's designs during the pitching rounds. So I hope you've all enjoyed the opportunity to do that, because that's something we weren't able to do before with the physical event. So from here, the top teams from each of those 6 pitching rounds were put forward to the final round for the judges. And they based their decision making on a submitted report, the pitching video, and their Q&A responses in the pitching. So a final decision was deliberated and finally made. So as a reminder, we've just heard from them, but those top 6 teams were Team 82 from University College Dublin with their connectivity, Team 134, I think it is now that we've clarified, University of Strathclyde with future-proofing the community's water supply, Team 99 from Nottingham Trent University with their waste for water design, Team 158 De Montfort University with their water gathering system, Team 144 from London South Bank University with their low-cost, lightweight and fish-friendly hydroelectric turbines, and Team 126 from the University of Sheffield with their design of an anaerobic digestion of waste. So finally, I get to announce these final 2 prizes. And the first one that I am pleased to announce is the Runners-Up Prize. So the Runners-Up Prize for the Engineering for People Design Challenge 2020 goes to Team 158 from De Montfort University. Hopefully you'll all join me at home in a round of applause for this team. So well done, Team 158. In a moment, I'll hopefully be joined back by Powell from the team to hear about their reaction. But whilst we find him, this is what the judges said. So the judges were really impressed with how well this team grasped the importance of the water scarcity issue, not only in Makers Valley, but South Africa as a whole. The judges could really see the strong methodology that underpinned your design process and the holistic way in which you thought through your ideas with very clear and detailed business and cost models, as well as producing a design that was affordable and modular. It was great that this made your ideas scalable and adaptable into a diverse array of houses and buildings, so well done. You should feel really proud of what you've achieved and learnt. So, Powell, welcome, congratulations. How do you feel?
Well, I feel really happy. I didn't expect that, to be honest. I thought there are a lot of different designs which were really, really good. And I don't know what to say. I'm just really happy to see that it was such a good idea, and it actually will be implemented. I believe it will be implemented in the future.
Great, thank you. And is there anything that you'd like to say on behalf of you, but also your teammates, perhaps?
I think I would really like to thank you for all your help or all the resources you've gave us. I would like to thank our lecturers which helped us, which were our mentors during the process of creating this project, who helped us with some methodology, who gave us advices on what to correct, what we should actually put in our report, what is actually bad and good. And I just don't know. I'm really happy to see all this happening now.
Great, thank you so much, Pal. So congratulations to you and your team. It's really lovely to hear from you, and I'm really excited to see what you do next. So congratulations and good luck. Okay, so now we move on to the final prize, the grand prize. This was a really tough decision for the judging panel to make. There's so many, as Pal just said, so many great and amazing ideas, and as I'm sure every judging panel says, when you have such strong and stiff competition, we'd love to give prizes to everybody, but unfortunately that's not the case. We had to pick a winner. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to announce that this year's winner of the Engineering for People Design Challenge 2020 is Team 82 from University College Dublin. And again, please do join me at home in clapping this round of applause of celebration. So well done, Team 82. So hopefully again in a minute, I'll be joined by Shane from the team to hear about their reaction. But whilst we find him, this is what the judges said. So the judges were really impressed with this project. You really built on the ethos and strength of Makers Valley and the local community. And it was really clear that you put the local artists, artisans and makers at the heart of your design. The project's aims were noble in aiming to help regenerate the community and allow people to take ownership of their space. The judges wanted to add that, we hope you take the importance of building on a community's existing strengths further in your future work. So congratulations and well done. So Shane, hi there, congratulations. Same question to you. How are you feeling at this moment?
I can't really believe it, to be honest. Yeah, we put a lot of work into this since September, since we began. And yeah, it's amazing to have actually won it. It's kind of unbelievable.
Well, you better believe it, because it's true. All that hard work has paid off. So maybe you could just share with us, I don't know if you've had time to think about this, but what does winning this prize in particular mean for you and your team?
Well, it means that all of our hard work is worth it. That's one thing for sure. But I think it really kind of shows that we do have what it takes, I guess, to make a very good design that can be recognized as good as it is. It's what honor it is to win the competition.
So I'm sure it's a shame, that you're probably on your own and not with your teammates to celebrate together. But I do hope that by some form of video conferencing wizardry, we'll to celebrate together later this evening. So thank you so much, Shane. Thank you so much to the rest of your team. Congratulations, and absolutely very best for the future. Hope you continue to perhaps think about being involved in what we do and what we're about. So congratulations, well done.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so huge congratulations again to everybody involved. So all of you, the students that have participated over the last year, the amazing academics that have supported you through, congratulations to you as well. And I'm sure for those of you that had supervised and mentored those top 6 teams, you're hopefully grinning right now. But I think every single academic on this call has the right to be proud of what they've achieved this last year. And of course, it wouldn't go, I couldn't not also say congratulations to our brilliant delivery partners. So Engineers Without Borders South Africa and USA, it's been amazing collaborating with you on this last year. I think I speak on behalf of the team, saying we've learned so much through working and collaborating with a more diverse group of people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different viewpoints, and of course the ever-inspiring Makers Valley and the people that we got to meet and interact with in Johannesburg. So congratulations to everybody who's been involved in this process over the last year. So I hope you'll join me at home for one last round of applause for you all. Okay, so to round us off for the end of today, I'm just going to hand you back to Luke.
Wow, what a day. Well, yeah, just like to echo what Katie has said there. Huge congratulations to everyone who's taken part in the Engineering for People Design Challenge this year. And thank you to our donors, our sponsors, our incredible academics, and to all our volunteers, the reviewers, the mentors, the judges, for all of their time. This program does not happen without you and without your support, so thank you. Lastly, I'd just like to say we encourage you to visit our website to find out more ways to get involved with the work that we do. This is an opportunity, to drive change towards a common goal, to see engineering that serves all people and our planet better than ever before. So thank you for attending today, and together, let's build a movement to ensure engineering is serving all people on our planet. Thank you.